Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Thank you for tuning in tonight as we continue to cover Hurricane Laura. And right now, the latest on Hurricane Laura, she is still a Cat 4. We are looking at winds of 150 miles per hour with maximum gust of about 175. The pressure is sitting at a 937 millibars, and it is moving 15 miles per hour north-northwest. And as you guys see right now, we are about less than 60 miles away from seeing the center making landfall. Now that we're already seeing tropical force winds taking place already. Lake Charles, right now your winds are up at 30 miles per hour, and that's up 6 miles per hour just in the last 5 minutes. Gusts seem to be going around 40 to 50 miles per hour. Cameron lost power about about 45 minutes ago. So even though we haven't seen the landfall yet, we're already dealing with high winds, tornado warnings. Flooding has already begun. And folks, if people haven't left, there's a headline right now that Mari just read to me before we went on the air. And the headline read, "If you haven't left by now, this is between you and God." Now, that's a pretty dire warning. And what we're looking at is the possibility of a lot of storm surge. And I will find you the graphic that will bring us just exactly what we're expecting for this storm surge. This thing is huge. And right now, we're getting ready to get an update on the storm in about 19 minutes. Now, Mari said that there was someone who just announced on Twitter, I believe, that this storm is done intensifying. And there was a lot of speculation because we still have about 4 hours of this eye of the storm being over the Gulf. But as you can see here, as Laura's making landfall, she's already starting to show some signs of weakening. Well, technically, on the satellite radar here. I'll go back to that. That's not it. So if you guys check out the front right, the northeast quadrant, as they say, you'll see here in the satellite imagery that we are seeing less of the red. Still plenty of deep colors over the water still. And unless something really big happens on that southwest side of this storm, it is very, very possible that we are indeed at the peak right now. Now, interesting enough, there's a video in here Mari's got. No, I'll let it cycle through. Pardon me. There it is. So this video right here, I don't know if it shows it all the way, but there is eyewall lightning taking place with this, and that's also another indication of a pretty strong storm. Now, don't let this fool you. Just because we are starting to see less of the red in the front right part of the storm doesn't mean that this is going to take away the effects of what's going to happen tonight. So that's first and foremost. concerning about this storm, the biggest thing really, guys, is the storm surge. 15 to 20 feet of storm surge. By the way, that quote, if you stay, it's between you and God. This was, I believe, a quote from the government officials here in Louisiana. But anyway, let's find the storm surge forecast. I wanted to show you guys really quick, because that's really the biggest part of this storm right now. That's the biggest danger. And I've seen this term being floated around all over the place tonight, not just on the Weather Channel, but other news outlets, Fox News, CNN, they're all using the term
Grammarly does more than catch error. With
Sorry
Grammarly,
about this.
you can find really good, perfect words that make your
Thank you, Grammarly. Appreciate that. It's Weather Channel. I'm borrowing their content, so I guess I can't complain too much, right? The storm surge, though, here in Cameron, power's already out, 15 to 20 feet. But the biggest thing tonight, the biggest threat tonight is going to be right in this area. Also, there are tornado warnings up and down the coast, and I'll point out where, right in here. So up to Cameron. So a pretty long swath here of tornado warnings right now as we're looking at the spin of this storm. But this is what everyone is saying, that this is unsurvivable. The 15 to 20 feet of storm surge, and high tide comes in at about 6 in the morning. So thankfully, this landfall and high tide do not go hand in hand. However, this storm will still be near the coast during high tide. It'll just be the southern part of this hurricane that will be affecting high tide. Can you imagine if this storm was hitting at high tide, 6 in the morning? 35-foot waves are crashing on shore now. And if we had a high tide, goodness. So there's the break of the night. We're still going to have some strong storm surge. We're going to get close to 8 inches of rain in places like Lake Charles. And the crazy part is we're talking about Shreveport that will be in hurricane conditions, a Category 1, by tomorrow morning. And I'm pretty sure that nobody had ever thought that they were going to be discussing a Category 1 hurricane hitting Shreveport, Louisiana. The hope is that the storm diminishes quickly, but a lot of the forecast models are not showing that. So we have to continue to just monitor the situation and hope and pray that people did get out of here, because this was a serious hurricane. And it makes me wonder, because the Weather Channel talked about this a couple days ago, about the possibility of this being a Cat 5, when really nobody was thinking more than a Cat 1 or a Cat 2. Okay, we're waiting for the next update, which should be in 13 minutes. So I'll go over a couple of things while we're waiting for the update. We'll get the latest on what our storm is doing, if it intensified anymore. Are the winds going to come down? Is the pressure going to go back up? Again, we've only got about 50 minutes before the center hits the coast here. And with that being said, whoa, that's weird. So let's go ahead and give a little bit of history on Laura. What has she done so far? Oh, wow. So it brought 4 to 6 inches of rain, locally 8 inches of rain in some spots of Puerto Rico. High winds, lots of damage, coastal damage. And it was at first thought that it was possible to see this storm actually stay on track to hit the Gulf, but for it to go over land as well through Cuba. And that didn't happen. The storm actually tracked a little bit further west and south of Cuba and stayed over water until it got to the Gulf. And then the first few paths, we were talking about New Orleans seeing 2 storms. That would have been very unfortunate. But thankfully, Marco wasn't much of a storm in the first place and quickly faded out into a tropical depression by the time it reached landfall. Now, the only thing about that, Marco being weak, is that there wasn't enough upwelling in the Gulf to cool off some of these temperatures. I mean, we're talking near 90 degrees where the storm is located right now. Nonetheless, the storm is progressing now north-northwest. And I know some folks in Houston are probably holding their breath right now because they're watching the wobble and they're thinking, is this thing heading towards us? And I'm going to say, I don't think so, but it's definitely closer than one would like. If you watch the run here, you'll almost see a slight movement to the west at the end of this. But this thing has wobbled back and forth. Houston don't need the problems for sure. We've seen plenty of flooding in Houston over the years from hurricanes since 2017. Not that anybody needs this problem. The hope also would have been is that this thing speeds up, and that didn't happen. But on a positive note, when we first reported on this, we thought that this thing would slow way down, and it didn't. It started at 17 miles an hour as it entered the Gulf of Mexico, and it continued on that path for several days at 16. Actually, it dropped to 16 miles per hour as we were live. And then finally, today, it dropped to 15 miles per hour. So it slowed down at about 120 miles right before it made landfall, or right before it's approaching landfall, I should say. And this is where we're at. It is now a Cat 4, pushing the possibility of being a Cat 5. We will find out here in the next 8 minutes. And we will find out exactly if we are looking at a Category 5 or if this thing is going to stay where it's at. Hopefully the winds die down a little bit. But the thing is, it was interesting watching some of the weather channels and Weather Nation, and they asked the question, they said, well, is there a sign of weakening? Because there was a radar image of it, and it was, I don't think I have a radar of it. No, I don't. So the radar image of this shows you that the south end of this storm is breaking up. And in fact, the radar from the ground cannot penetrate through everything that's going on. So the best way to look at this hurricane, honestly, is infrared satellite. Here we see a very, very well-developed eye wall, which in the returns on the local radar, it's not showing that because, again, it cannot pick up through how heavy the rain and wind is here with this particular storm. No, it's no Harvey, and that's a good thing. Good to see you out there, Matt. Also, I saw a knife collector, I thought, a little bit ago. Marie Mitchell, long time no see. For me, anyway. I know Mari's always in the chat, so she probably sees you all the time, but I don't. So good to have you on the show. But back to the hurricane. Very strong Category 4. Again, winds at 150 miles per hour. Gust up to 175. And also pressure of 937. Here we go. The latest pressure has gone up to 939 millibars. It is still moving north-northwest at 15 miles per hour. The winds are sustained at 150, and it is still a Cat 4. So the latest update, the only change in this was the pressure went up 2 millibars. Now, that means, yes, Mari, what you read was absolutely correct. This storm has peaked out. So at this point, I think it's safe to say, I could be wrong, but when you have the pressure rising like this, usually that means we've seen peak intensification. And another indication too was on this radar here. Nope, this one. You guys, I'll try to see if I can zoom this in a little more. Check out the eye wall. That, with the lightning there, that usually happens during a peak of a storm that's intensifying. And this would match up. As you watch this run, there's a lot of lightning, and by the end, it starts to die down just a little bit on the lightning. Not a lot, just a little. So the forecasters out there are doing a great job at following the storm and also educating the folks that are actually watching and paying attention and calling the storm. And it's good that we have people out there who are able to get this info out to help warn people, and not only that, but keep the fear mongering down as well. So with this being said, 150 could be the max tonight. Now, the next advisory is at 1 a.m. That should be right around the time that the center is making its landfall. Again, 15 to 20 feet of storm surge tonight near Cameron. And we're already seeing the storm surge begin at this time. Tornado warnings now being extended all the way through the coast, all the way to Beaumont. So we are now seeing weather alerts going up on the very eastern edge of Texas. Beaumont is now seeing 23 mile an hour winds with 31 mile an hour gusts. Things are starting to pick up. Hurricane warning tonight for counties all over western Louisiana and eastern Texas near Lufkin, Texas, Port Arthur, Galveston, cities of Cameron, Lake Charles, and Alexandria also in a hurricane warning. Tropical storm warning for tomorrow, but I think they're being modest for Shreveport. I honestly believe that we'll see Cat 1 conditions flying through tomorrow morning, unfortunately. Okay, let's take a look at the storm surges that are being expected tonight. Cameron again at the 15 to 20 foot range. And then it kind of dies off as you get into Texas, especially near Galveston and Freeport. So unprecedented information that we have received tonight about this storm. And again, I can't stress enough, I really hope that folks have made their way away from this place. I mean, some of these guys were talking about hunkering down for the night. Hunkering down. There's no hunkering down in this storm. This is not, yeah, I don't know. Matt says 31 mile an hour gusts. That's a normal day in western Nebraska. And I can tell you right now, I lived in western Kansas, northwestern Kansas, and 31 miles an hour was a weak wind day for sure. There, I don't know how many of you that are in the chat right now that are from that part of the country, but I can tell you this: the wind is, if you're not used to it, if you're from anywhere else but the Plain States, the wind almost becomes annoying. You walk outside and boom, you get hit in the face with wind. And it's all day long. And no matter what, you're getting blown in the face with wind. I literally became annoyed with the wind on certain days. I worked outside, so it was kind of interesting how stuff like normal high winds, you're used to it when you live in the Plain States. When you're from the Midwest or you're from the Northeast, you're not used to just walking outside and the wind's blowing the way they do. But anyway, off topic. Mari, are you getting anything on the Twitter at all?
No, I mean,
I think we'll do that. Let's we'll go ahead and break away from now. We have another update coming up at 1 a.m., but they do update these from time to time as well. So I think right now we'll go ahead and leave the feed going, keep the chat alive, and we will probably be back in about a half hour or so just to kind of check in and give you the latest on stats. We'll have updates on power outages. As right now, we already have power outages starting in the southern regions. Doug is from Louisiana. He is also here. Hopefully, you're safe tonight. Good to have you aboard. But yeah, we'll come back here in about a half hour or so, and we'll give an update. But right now, as of the 11 o'clock hour here Eastern time, Hurricane Laura is still at Category 5 or 4, sorry, 150 mile an hour winds with a pressure of 939 millibars. That's the one thing that did go up, and that is also the indication that a storm is no longer strengthening when you have a rise in the pressure. Moving north-northwest at 15 miles per hour. Not a very slow storm, but not a very fast storm either. So this won't be a Harvey event. This won't I can talk. And this won't dump a bunch of rain like Harvey did. But with the storm surge and the 6 to 10 inches of rain expected in this region, not looking too good. So we'll continue to monitor the situation. We're not going to break away. We're going to stay live. You guys, the chat will be open, and we'll probably be back in about a half hour or so to give another update. Check one. All right. So we're back. Let's do another update. We're pretty much watching the situation as about as close as you can. And right now, unfortunately, guys, there's just not a lot to footage to show. It's dark out. Camera footage is not really good. We have been looking all over for some decent footage right now, and we haven't found it. So let's give another update. And I see some questions in the chat. No, it is actually right now, winds are at 150 miles per hour, maximum gusts at 175. Right now it is moving north-northwest at 15 miles per hour. It is a category 4, and the pressure went up about 2 millibars. So we are sitting at 939 millibars. Now, that's an indication that the storm is not going to strengthen. When pressure starts to come up, we will start to see it weaken, which makes sense because we're very, very, very close to the coast right now. This is actually, believe it or not, they say 2 o'clock in the morning. I say it's going to be closer to midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning here on the East Coast. But when you see pressure starting to drop a little bit, that's when the storm will begin to decrease, I guess we should say. I wish I could stop the music, folks, but we were playing it earlier for, you know, background, and now we can't get it to shut off, so just deal with it. Anyway, good old Grand Solar Minimum Channel type production, let me tell you. So with storm surge coming in right where the center of this storm is, guys, you can see it. The eye here. And the eye is going to bring, good Lord, having all kinds of problems tonight. Let's see if this shows up. It does. Okay. I will show you here just in a second where we are looking at storm surge. Okay, here we go, finally, yeah. All right, so storm surge. From where my arrow is pointing, we are expecting between 15 and 20 feet of storm surge. All right, that's going to take several days for that water to recede. A lot of these houses here in Cameron and along the coast of Louisiana are built on stilts. But when you have 15 to 20 feet of storm surge, that may not be enough, folks. So that's where we are concerned the most, is that even though some of these houses are built for storm surge, not too many storms come in on. Let's do another update. Whoops. Usually, this part of Louisiana and Texas, they do not see storms this strong. This is actually the first of its kind. So there has never been a storm this powerful to impact this part of Louisiana. This is the first. So when you see pictures out in Cameron where these houses were built on stilts, you think, well, that's good enough. They've never seen anything like this before. And unfortunately tonight, we are going to see, storm surge that is beyond the expectations. Now, there is some good news about this storm surge that's coming in later when this thing makes landfall. And that is, we are not seeing the storm surge and the high tide come in at the same exact time. Now, high tide is scheduled for 6 a.m., and there will still be an effect from the storm and high tide. It's going to be bad, but imagine if we had the storm surge and the high tide at the same time, the peak of the storm surge and the peak of high tide. That would have been beyond catastrophic. It's already being reported right now that we have waves up to 35 to 40 feet high right now. As we cycle through some of these images, this is a pretty powerful storm. This is the first major hurricane to affect the United States in 2020. And AccuWeather updated their forecast, and I think they said that we were going to see 4 or 5 major hurricanes. Well, here's number 1. So that means we've got another 4 to 6 on its way in the month of September and early part of October. So buckle up. We are in for a heck of a ride here. I want to say quickly hello to Eric. I think Eric Reeder, maybe, but he is from New Zealand. Good to see you. I guess the time difference is not that big of a deal for you at this point. So power outages we'll continue to monitor right now. Not that big, but this storm hasn't even made landfall, and tropical wind forces are now, just now, starting to affect the coast here in Louisiana. Again, we are expecting 15 to 20 feet of storm surge in this particular area here. Other areas, such further off to the east, we'll see between 5 and 10 feet. And then as you get into New Orleans, not really much of anything, 1 to 3 feet tops. So it could be a lot worse, guys. And thankfully, we are just dealing with this Cat 4 that could be decreasing in strength as we continue to see this approaching. Checking out a couple different images here too. It's pretty remarkable how big this storm is. Let me go back here, show you guys real quick. I mean, check that out. There's a system right above it, okay? This right here is what's going to help storm this, or steer this storm off. And once it makes landfall, it's going to hook up with this system here, and it's going to carry it on out to the mid-Atlantic and then up into the northeast. Not going to affect landfall, but we are going to see some rain up in here as well this weekend into the northeast. This low pressure system that's moving along is going to combine, and there will be a decent amount of rain. Not as much as what we're seeing here in Louisiana and parts of Arkansas. I mean, we're still going to have flooding all the way up through here by Friday. So pretty major hurricane that is making landfall. Right now, the official numbers on this storm, it is still a Category 4. It is moving north-northwest at 15 miles per hour with sustained winds of 150 miles per hour. Maximum gusts have been recorded at 175 miles per hour. And the pressure is just now going up a little bit at 939. Jim Sneer asks, could it stall long enough to be same time as high tide? So right now, the storm is right about 45 miles off of the coast of Louisiana, approximately. I'm not saying this is exact. The storm is moving at 15 miles per hour right now. So unless we see a dramatic slowdown in the speed of this storm, I don't think it's going to have that kind of time to stall out. Unfortunately, or fortunately, actually, it's not going to stall out and come in at the same time as high tide. So at 15 miles per hour, we're approximately 45 miles away from landfall. We're talking about 4 to 5 hours, which I think it'll be a little quicker than that. But at least 4 to 5 hours. So officially, we're talking between 1 and 2 in the morning. It could be between midnight and 1. If it does happen that way, that means the storm speeds up. Eric says, the jet stream has also been blamed for causing the weird weather in Siberia and China. Also, China got snow during summer as well. Well, when you're talking about grand solar minimum and low solar activity, lower magnetic field everywhere, when you have low solar wind, that jet stream goes everywhere. It wanders. When solar winds are strong and continuous, you have a tighter jet stream. So when you make the comment about the jet stream is being blamed for causing weird weather in Siberia and China, I 100% agree. And the reason why, you know this, you've been following the grand solar minimum for quite some time. But with the effects from our sun right now, that is causing the jet stream to act wonky. And to hear summer snow in China is stuff that we've been telling you about now for 3 years. This should be a very, very interesting winter for us here in the Northern Hemisphere. Last year in the UK, a big time break. Not a lot of winter weather to talk about. Here in the US, we had a solid winter, consistent cold and snow, nothing amazing or record breaking. Of course, we had some anomalies, but nothing like what we saw in 17 and 18. But this year is going to be a little bit different, I think. And I say that because of lack of solar activity, still continuing to this day. We are now 5 days in a row without sunspots, by the way. It's really quiet on the sun again. We have a La Nina that is going to develop at some point early fall into early winter. And I really think I got a sneak peek at some of the long-term forecast. And if you live in the Northeast, it's going to be cold and snowy. More cold air than snow in the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan. You're going to see some snow this year. Lots of snow for the northern plain states. Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And they're calling it wet and mild in the Northwest and in the Southwest as well. And just wet in Texas and across the South. We could see some ice storms this year across Tennessee and Kentucky, as well as North Carolina and South Carolina. So there are a lot of speculations right now about this winter not being as nice to us as last winter. I thought last winter was nice compared to what we've seen in 2017 and 18 and parts of 19 in some spots, but it was pretty normal in my opinion. Still had some record cold. You're going to have that regionally, but for the most part, I think this year we might not get as lucky. Again, we will probably go ahead and sign off for the night. Just wanted to give an update before we did go off the air that Hurricane Laura right now is still a Category 5. Winds at 150 miles per hour, moving north-northwest at 15 miles per hour with a pressure of 939. And I hope I answered your question there, Jim, about stalling out. It doesn't look like it's going to be in the cards tonight. This storm is going way too fast right now to stall out. In my opinion of observing storms, I feel pretty confident that this storm is not going to stall out. This thing will continue. When Dorian stalled out, Dorian was already creeping. I mean, it was going 3, 4, 5 miles an hour, and then it just parked itself for 5 to 8 hours. So a big difference in that storm too. It was a monster storm, and also we were in the solar storm, by the way, at least a G1. So we had a stream of solar particles being bombarded on our atmosphere, highly charged particles. And the crazy part is part of the reason why I felt like this storm kept its strength, Dorian now, it was because of the amount of solar particles that were being flowed into our atmosphere at the time. The storm didn't go anywhere. It stood still for 5 to 8 hours and was a Category 5, a monster storm, before it finally turned north, went up the East Coast. By then, the Bahamas was changed. And a lot of people, I tell you, the thing about Dorian, and I hope I never have to go through something like Dorian as far as reporting on it, because Mari and I stayed up all night with that one. We found a radio station from the Bahamas, and the seriousness of this storm, the lack of preparedness for some of these people. There were radio programs. We got a radio station out of the Bahamas, and they were praying on the air live. And they were, folks, I'm going to tell you, they were preparing to meet their maker. And I'll never forget that night because of that. All the prayers, all of the gospel music that was being played. This was truly something to be scared of. And Dorian will always be in my brain. It's burned for sure. It's scarred. To see a storm just sit there for as long as it did, no movement, and then finally turn north. But by then, thousands were dead. And I'll tell you, I still don't believe the death toll numbers from that region. And the reason why I don't is because there were tens of thousands of undocumented people that were in the Bahamas during this storm. So we may never know the true death count. I can tell you this, I remember all the stories reading about how the stench in the air the day or 2 days after, and all the missing people and just all the death, and how many people were scared and trapped on rooftops, and the lack of help. Dorian was definitely historic. Now, this storm is nowhere near Dorian, thankfully. We hope that a storm like Dorian only happens once in a lifetime. So anyway, we hope everybody's safe tonight. We appreciate you guys tuning in and checking out the Grand Solar Minimum. We'll be back tomorrow morning, bright and early. I can't promise too early, but I can tell you right now, we're going to have daylight. We're going to be able to see pictures. We're going to have video. We're going to be able to see what kind of storm surge we're talking about. I'm sure in the morning, we're going to see some pretty amazing pictures and videos of this storm right here, because listen, somebody said earlier, this is a nothing burger storm. I hope you're right. I hope somehow magically this 150-mile-an-hour wind hurricane somehow just skips right over the United States and nothing happen. Because if anybody stayed on the coast near Cameron, Louisiana, as the headline read, this is between you and God. That's not a kind of headline that you want to flirt your fate with. I'll tell you that right now. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in once again. We'll see you in the morning. Hopefully everyone stay safe. Please stay safe. Any amateurs out there that want to get footage of this in the morning, please be very, very careful. The flooding is going to be a serious problem. Don't take any chances. These are one of these storms where we don't see this kind of stuff out here. There's going to be a lot of people wanting to take pictures and video. All I ask is make sure it's safe. You don't want to get caught in these flooded waters, any kind of danger whatsoever, folks. It's not worth it. All right, guys, be safe. We'll see you in the morning.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.